Okay, so we're going to be looking now at exercise number 2. We're going to start by creating our default or our base model, and then we're going to be adding 2 configurations. So it's worth looking at the configurations and what we're going to be changing, because that may affect how we're going to approach this. So as we look at our base part, you're going to notice that we have a series of slots and we have some holes. Okay, a relatively simple part. The configurations that we're going to do is you're going to notice that our holes are going to go from 0.75 diameter to 1.5 or 1.0 diameter. So those holes are going to get a little larger. Okay. And then additionally, the slot length is going to go from 2 inches to 3 inches. Okay. But the number of slots and the number of holes remains the same. For our second configuration, everything is going to remain the same as we see up here. So the longer slots, the bigger holes, but the only thing that changes here is that it's going to get a little bit thicker. Okay. So, so we're going to look at the base configuration and configuration 1A, and then you'll get to do and finish up by doing our, the last configuration there, practicing what you know. So I'm going to go over to SolidWorks. We're going to start our plate, extrude boss face. We're going to look at the top view. And in this case, when we start looking at the part itself, there isn't really, I mean, there is an axis of symmetry, but there's not like a clear center. So what I'm going to do for this part is I'm just going to keep my origin down in the lower left-hand corner, because there's no need, if you would, to put it on at the center. So I'm just going to do corner rectangle, and I'm going to go up and to the right, and then I'm going to smart dimension. The height is 4.5, and the overall length is 6. Okay. I'm fully defined. I have it on my origin, so it knows where it's at in space. I can hit exit, and the thickness of this plate is 1/4 inch. So a blind extrude 0.25. There we go. Okay. So I am going to rename base plate. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the fillets to the outside corners. And again, you could do this at the sketch level. I don't know. It's kind of a horse apiece. If there's a chance that the radius might change, it's good to have it as its own feature. But if not, oops, see, I did the wrong one there. I did the face. Let's get rid of that one. I'll delete that. I left clicked it, then right clicked it. You got to make sure, and worth getting in there. Make sure you got the edge so that you've got the corner radiuses. And my radius is 0.5. There we go. So I like to rename it, and at the beginning I just like to say 0.5 R. There we go. Okay, we'll do a file save, and this is example, or actually exercise 2. Okay, now I'm going to add the 3 holes. We'll put those in place. They're 3/4 and they're going to go to 1. So we can use the hole wizard because those are standard drill sizes. Okay. So I'm going to use the hole wizard. I'm going to click on the hole wizard. It's just going to be a straight hole going all the way through. I'm going to change the end condition right away to through all. So I don't have to worry about changing that because it remembered that I did blind before. And I want to be in ANSI inch here and standard drill sizes. And I want to go down to 3/4 inch right there. Show decimal values. There we go. So here, this all looks good. Now I'm in a position. Do not use 3D Sketch. Click on your actual surface here, which is the top surface. And now what I want to do is I just want to put 1, 2, 3 holes in place. Okay. I'm going to immediately start doing my dimensioning or adding relations. The first relation I'm going to add, okay, is going to be from the center point of each one of these, so points 3 or 1, 2, and 3, I want these all in line with one another vertically. Okay, so you can do those all 3 at once. That way they're all on the same line. I don't have to worry about separately dimensioning those. Then I'm going to add my smart dimensions. I'm going to go from the bottom of the part to the center, and that needs to be half of 4.5, which is 2.25. And then between, I'm going to be at 1.25 and 1.25 up here. The typical means that on both sides, the dimension is 1.25. That's what TYP means. You're going to notice that there's 1.25 TYP. That means typical, so both of these dimensions are the same. Okay. So we have that, but we're not fully defined. I need to now give it like a horizontal dimension from the origin or from one of the sides of the parts. So in this case, they have from the right-hand side to the center is 1.5. Okay, and whether you really, any one of those holes you can dimension, because by establishing that relation that they're all vertical in line with one another, they're going to all move at the same time. So now I'm fully defined. Okay, so I've got my dimensions, and again, adding that relation of these 3 being vertically aligned gets me fully defined, and I can now hit OK. All right, so I've got a 3/4 inch hole, and you're going to notice that they're all fully defined. Okay. A quick save. And then the last feature that we're going to be adding is going to be the series of slots. I'm going to start by drawing one slot, and then we're going to do a linear pattern going up. Okay. So we're going to go back to SolidWorks. We're going to do an extrude cut on this front surface. And then what we're going to use is down below the rectangle, there is a straight slot option. So if you have to, make sure it's the top one here. If you have to arrow down, we want the straight slot option. Okay. This is one I don't think we've used this in this class yet. So you could construct it by using circles and lines, but they've got it actually here for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to simply left click for one side, left click for the other, and then we're going to go up vertically for a width of our slot. Okay, and that's how we draw it. You can click the OK button. So I'll do it one more time so you can see it. So again, it's going to be the straight slot, left click, and then kind of go up and left click a third time. So it's 3 clicks to get it in place. Okay. Now what I need to do is get this one slot fully defined. And then at the feature level, we'll do a linear pattern. So I'm going to start by smart dimensioning the radius on one side, and this sets the width. So it's a total width of 1/4 inch, and the radius, if we look on our drawing, our radius is 0.125, and typical means for all of those slots. So our radius here, see, 0.125. There we go. Okay, so that's there. Then what we need to do is we need to identify where it's located. So we're going to go from the right-hand side to the center of our slot. Okay, and that's going to be 0.5. And then from the bottom to the center in this direction is going to be 0.5. Okay. And then we just need the length of our slot. So from the left side to the right side, it's going to be 2 inches. And now we should be fully defined. And I am. Okay. So from that corner 1/2 inch up and over, and then 2 inches long with a radius of 0.125. Once we have those in place and you're fully defined, you can exit this sketch. We went in underneath an extrude cut. So now it wants to go all the way through, which is exactly what we want. Through all, we're going to say okay. And we're gonna rename that as slot. Okay. There we go. I'm gonna do a file save. So now we have our first slot in place. Let me go back over here. We've got this one in place right here. So if we count, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total, including the one that we just drew. So we're going to use our linear pattern in order to place the rest of them in there. So at the feature level on our feature tab here, we're going to click on linear pattern. Okay. And the first thing it's going to ask us is what is the direction? So the direction that we're going to be going in is going to be vertically. So we just want to click a vertical line. So I'm just going to grab a vertical line. It could be this line. It could be that line. Okay. Anything that's vertical. Okay. Because we want it to go along that line. It's going to ask for, this is going to be the spacing and the instances. The spacing is going to be 0.5 inches between. So 0.5. Okay. And then we're going to want a total of 8. So including the one that we drew, we want 8 total. Now, direction 2, this would be if we wanted to now add then, let's say going to the right. All right, we don't want to do that. We just want to go in one direction. So we don't need to fill that in, but we do need to let SolidWorks know what features we're going to be using. So to let SolidWorks know what features, we're going to expand out our part on our screen. And we're going to click on just the slot. And once we do that, you'll get a preview of the instances of the slots that we have. If they're overlapping or anything, then go back and change that dimension underneath the direction 1 to 0.5. Okay, and make sure that you've got 8 of them in there.
How did you get the slots?
Well, once you select on slots,
Yeah.
yep, you got your features, then make sure at the bottom that you have a partial preview there. And then
So that they're going the wrong way.
If they're going the wrong way, then you can, right next to the direction up here, you can click that and it toggles it going in the opposite direction. Okay. All right. So now we've got our 8 slots placed and we have our base model complete. So we want to simply click save. Okay. So we've got that base model done. We've got all the features in this part. So this is going to be our default model. Now what we want to do is we're going to go over and we're going to create the configuration for 1A. For this configuration, we're going to be changing the length of the slot to 3, and we're going to be changing the holes to be 1 inch instead of 3/4. Okay, so 2 changes for this one. So we're going to go back over to SolidWorks. We're going to jump over to the configuration manager. We're going to left click on our part on the top. We're going to right click and we're going to say add configurations or add a configuration. This is going to be config 1A. That's what they're calling it on this one. And our description is simply going to be longer slots and larger holes. You don't have to put the numbers. I mean, if you wanted to, you could. And then once we have that filled out, config 1A, we're going to hit OK. And it populates here and it selects it. So now you'll notice you have the green check mark in front of config 1A. With that selected, we're going to go over to the part. Okay, and you should see at the very top here, your Exercise2 config 1A at the top, not default. If it isn't, go back to your configuration model, double click on that so it selects it, and then go back. Okay, so our 2 changes that we're going to make these slots longer. Okay, so I'm going to go over, I'm going to expand out the slot, and the place where we had the longer dimension was inside the sketch. So we're going to click on the sketch and we're going to edit the sketch. Now, remember, when we're in configurations and we only want this to apply to this configuration, be careful here. So I'm going to double click on that 2 inches. I'm gonna change it to 3, but don't hit enter yet and don't accept. You have to go to this configurations on the right-hand side and say this configuration only. And then we can hit the green check mark and it changes it to 3. And we can say, okay, and exit the sketch. And now the slots all got longer. Okay, let's do a file save. Now, if you're wondering, did I do that right or not? Go back to your configurations at the top here, the configuration manager, and double click on the default. It got shorter. Okay, if it didn't, that means that you didn't select just that configuration. And then if I double click to the 1A, they get longer. I'm not done with 1A, so keep 1A selected, go back to the part. And now I need to change the 3/4 inch holes to 1 inch. So I'm simply gonna left click on that 3/4. I'm gonna edit the feature because that's where I have to actually do the size of the hole. And I'm gonna go down here and where it says size, I'm gonna change this to 1 inch. Very bottom. And there's a box here. But before we hit the green check mark, we have to click on configurations. And again, on the dialog box, we have to click this configuration only because we don't want the default to change. Just this one, and we're going to hit OK. And then we can hit OK. All right. Now, if we want to, I'm going to do a file save, make sure. I'm going to go back to my configuration manager. I'm going to click on, and I'm going to watch my diagram here. I'm going to click on the default, and what should happen is the hole should get smaller and the slot should get shorter, and it did. If you go back to 1A, my slots get longer and my holes get larger. Right. And if that happens, you did it correctly. Now, with 1A selected, you're going to finish up this problem. Okay, I'm not going to do the last configuration. Configuration B is going to be keeping the longer slots, the larger holes, but now you're going to add a thickness difference. Okay, so I'm going to let you finish this up and I'm going to stop the recording here.